Following a 14-win season, what would be the best outcome for a Detroit Pistons team looking to make a rise up the standings? We'll talk about that in just a moment.
Lane, skies a jam. Dynamite dunk and the crowd loves it.
Welcome back to Pistons Intellect. I'm your host, Jack Kelly. You can follow me on Twitter at Jack_Kelly_3on3. You can also follow us over on Instagram at Pistons_Intellect. And as always, if you're feeling so kind, please hit that subscribe button. Now, for today's show, as I mentioned off the top, I wanted to go through kind of what I consider a best possible outcome for the Pistons this offseason in terms of what the roster could look like. This has nothing to do with the coaches. It's just a player thing. So I think you'll enjoy that. But before I get to that, because this kind of ties in with the roster kind of prediction I made as the best outcome, I just wanted to touch on somewhat of some news we got. I wouldn't say news, but we got an article towards the end of last week from James Edwards III. It was a mailbag episode. I touched on it in my last episode with the Monty Williams stuff, but I wanted to make last episode all about Monty Williams. So for any Monty Williams updates, that episode's still relevant, so you can go back and watch that one. But James also mentioned in his piece, in response to a question surrounding free agency, who the Pistons could be targeting. And in James's words, he said, I think Detroit goes heavily after the likes of Malik Monk, Nick Claxton, and Gary Harris. Now, he also went on to say, Monk feels like someone the Pistons will heavily prioritize due to the team's need for legitimate three-point shooting and off-the-dribble shot creation. Claxton would address the rim protection rows, and then Gary Harris, despite usually missing several games this season due to injury, is the exact type of 3-and-D role player the Pistons could use. Now, Malik Monk, Nick Claxton aren't new names, obviously, but I think the reason I'm highlighting this because I think it's interesting James used the phrase heavily to describe the Pistons' pursuit of these players. Now, I've heard the Pistons be tied to this whole offseason. Malik Monk has obviously been someone they've been interested in and should be, and there's a player Pistons fans want their team to be interested in, but I haven't seen the word like heavily used with Malik Monk. So I've kind of been through these players before and their strengths and weaknesses, and Malik Monk came off a season where I think he averaged 16 points, which was a career high 5 assists, shot like 36% from three on high volume. It's interesting to note here, James mentions off the dribble shot creation. Malik Monk kind of struggled shooting off the dribble this season, but I still think he is a valuable shot creator and something that can at least get to the rim. And I think a lot of his assists, that career high 5 assists, come off his dribble penetration and kind of opening up things for his teammates, drawing a defender and that kind of thing. So I think that all feeds into off the dribble kind of shot creation stuff. So the question is for Claxton and Malik Monk, how much are the Pistons willing to pay? Because I went through probably 2 weeks ago now, some reporting around each of those guys and how much they might cost. And Claxton, at the time, I read the Brooklyn Nets are looking to pay him around $20 million a season. So the Pistons, to get Claxton, it feels like, would have to go somewhere near that 4 years, $100 million range, I think. So that's a lot of money. But that seems what it might take to get him from the Nets. Hopefully it's a bit less, but as I said, that 4 years, $80 million is what I'd seen kind of for Claxton to say in Brooklyn. So maybe not 25 mil, but it sounds like the Pistons going to have to pay obviously at least more than 80 million across 4 years for Claxton. So let me know how you feel about that. Malik Monk as well, I think is going to come at a similar cost. I think he's going to be around 4 years, 100 million as well. Now, it seems like a lot of money to pay for role players because that's what Claxton and Malik Monk are. They're good role players, but they are role players. Claxton, I think, is a little bit younger, but both are kind of entering their prime. So, I mean, these are the types of players the Pistons need to spend their cap space on because you don't get You don't get Jimmy Butler. You don't get LeBron James. You don't get Paul George in free agency these days. And even if they were on the free agency market, the Pistons, they are so far down the totem pole of like desirable places that it just, that cap space has to go somewhere. And, I think that's why I've lent into the idea of spending that kind of money on a Malik Monk or maybe on a Nick Claxton. The Claxton one's a funny one because of the Jalen Duren situation. You could say the same about Monk and Ivy, but I feel like Monk as your sixth man still makes a ton of sense. So like Claxton as your sixth man on 25 million at the center position doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's why even if the Pistons were to keep Ivy and sign Monk, I don't find any issues with that because either one of them can come off the bench. And either one can play alongside each other. I still think that works quite well. Claxton, Duran one, they can't play on the floor together. So that's where the Claxton one's a bit dicey, but Pistons seem interested in him and he would help this team immediately. So, yeah. The last player, Gary Harris. I haven't spoken about Gary Harris much on the show, so I wanted to just do a quick couple of minutes on him and how he's been playing. So in the past 2 seasons, he's played 48 games of 54 games. He's played around exactly 24 minutes a game. He shot from 3 last season, or when I'm saying last season, I mean the 22-23 season. He shot 43% from 3 on around 5 attempts a game. Really, really high volume and high efficiency there. And then 37% on just under 4 attempts this past season. So a bit of a drop off there, but still a pretty good efficiency, especially for this Pistons team. Now he's 29 years old. He's averaged pretty much around 7 points per game in the past 2 seasons. And he's a guy that gives you a couple of rebounds and a couple of assists. So in terms of when you just look at the raw output, he's not a guy that's going to come in and average 15 points and give you 6 boards, 4 assists, something like that. Like, I think those days are past him. That was more when he was with the Nuggets, but I still think there's some value there. I don't think you would want to pay him a whole lot. I'm not sure how people feel about paying him the mid-level. Maybe that's what's going to cost to get a 3-and-D wing these days at his age of 29 in his prime. But I think it's worth mentioning because the efficiency is decent and I think he's a really solid defender and he's a guy, he's just come from the Magic who were, I think they finished the season the top 3 defense and he was a part of that. And he's always just been one of those valuable 3-and-D kind of role players, even as the numbers have kind of tailed off from a volume standpoint in terms of points, assists, and that kind of thing. But the efficiency is kind of held. He's a career 37% 3-point shooter, and that's pretty much what he shot last season. So bit of info on him. I think he is from Michigan State. I'm not sure if he's actually from Michigan. No, he's from Indiana, but just a cool little tie to add on there for any of you state fans who watch the show. So those are kind of the targets. Now, this kind of brings me to what I deem potentially the best outcome. So I released a graphic, which I'm going to pull up in a few seconds here. I put it on Instagram and Twitter just to gauge the fans kind of, or the Pistons community, I should say, how they felt about a roster. If this is the roster the Pistons had coming into opening day, how would you guys feel? So, and this was kind of based off. Obviously, it's a best case scenario. Obviously, the likelihood of this happening is low, but I just, it's the best outcome. So that's kind of the mind frame I had when making this. So as you can see here, the starting lineup consists of Cade Cunningham, Malik Monk, Brandon Ingram, Simone Fontecchio, and Nick Claxton. Off the bench, you then have Marcus Sasser. You would sign DeLon Wright, Quentin Grimes, Asar Thompson, Jalen Duren. So clearly here, the 3 main pieces missing that would be shipped out in a trade for Brandon Ingram, RJ and Ivy is Isaiah Stewart and pick 5. Now, I've seen some trades thrown out by reputable people that I really trust and listen to a lot, offering a lot less for Ingram based off the fact the Pelicans are kind of in a weird situation with Ingram only having a year left. I still think they're going to have to, just to make the salary work, you have to give up Stu. I saw a trade from Sam Vecini saying, I think it was It might have been Stu, Marcus Sasser, Pistons first round pick 5, and then the Pistons got back pick 21 from the Pelicans this season, and Ingram. I mean, I would do that in a heartbeat. I just feel like the Pelicans would want more than Marcus Sasser, but maybe Sasser fits more what they want. He's an older point guard. I think Sasser next season will be like 24. In terms of what he offers day one, he can shoot the ball, he spaces, and maybe in a better system, his defense stands out more on a better team. So I kind of get it because Ivy's still much more of a project. But yeah, I would do that trade in a heartbeat. But in this instance, I've gone Ivy, Stu, and pick 5 for Ingram. Obviously, then the Pistons signed Claxton and Malik Monk. I have them roughly signing deals around 4 years, 90 million to 95 million. And then they would also sign DeLon Wright on a vet minimum type deal. If you had these 10 players, you're pretty much filling out the roster with minimums and a second round pick. So these will be your 10 guys, unless you hit the lottery with a second round pick. But based off the reporting, based off kind of what I've read and seen from fans, this is what I deem the best case scenario. Got a lot of Pistons people in the community who thought this would be an unreal kind of outcome. I think here you have shooting in the starting lineup. You have dead-eye shooting in Malik Monk and Fontecchio, guys that the defense has to honor. You have Brandon Ingram who can create his own shot and get to his stuff in the mid-range. Cade Cunningham, he's Cade Cunningham. We know who he is. Nick Claxton, as I meant, the roll man, can also defend the rim and rebound a little. Then off the bench, you have Marcus Sasser and DeLon Wright. Not pure point guards either, but both kind of combo guards who can get the offense flowing a little bit. You would also ideally not do what Monty Williams did and run all bench lineups. So ideally, you'd always have Cade or Ingram on the floor to run the offense a little bit. Then you have Jalen Duren coming off the bench, who I think would excel, especially next season or to start next season coming off the bench. I think he would thrive as a backup big. Then you have Asar Thompson and Quentin Grimes on the wings for defense, clearly, and then Grimes can shoot a 3. I still believe in his shot. So I think this is the best case scenario. I'm really keen to hear your thoughts if you haven't seen this. Obviously, the likelihood of this happening would be less than 1%, I would say. But I do think there is a chance the Pistons, if we just look at that starting lineup, could end up with 4 of those 5 players starting opening night. I do think that is a possibility. But in terms of all 5 of those guys starting, I'm not sure. But sounds like Fontecchio is definitely going to be back. And it just feels like the Pistons are going to get one of Monk or Claxton now, just with the amount of money they have. And I kind of hope they do, because if they don't and the Pistons have all this cap space and can't sign anyone, that'll be concerning. So, yeah, let me know your thoughts on that one. I could go into it more, but I'm much more interested to hear your thoughts on it. And, how many wins do you think that lineup could get? Because I had some people throw around mid-40s, had some 50s thrown at me, and then I had a lot of low 30s. And then I just take these ones as jokes when people say a lineup like this would only win like 20 games or less. So, but, I had predictions all over the place. Some people said top 6 in the East. So I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on that graphic. How many wins, and, is that a play-in, a playoff team, or do they still struggle next season? And just to confirm, I had someone questioning the cap space, that kind of thing. The Pistons can make those 10 players work. Trust me, it can work. So feel free to go to discuss that in the comments. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that they can make that lineup happen. So moving on. Last thing I wanted to hit on today was a kind of an update on Cade Cunningham. We all kind of felt like the Cade extension was coming and that he will re-sign. And James Edwards III kind of noted in another mailbag piece over the weekend that Cade will sign that extension. And James said in his own words, I'm 99.9% sure that Cade Cunningham gets an extension this offseason. I don't want to say 100% because you never know, but I'd be stunned if the 2021 number 1 overall pick doesn't sign a max rookie extension. Now, just doing a little bit of research, the max extension Cade Cunningham can be offered and signed is 5 years, $225 million. So that works out to roughly, I'm doing some maths off the fly here, but around $45 million per year for Cade Cunningham. Now, I know fans are going to hear that and say, well, Pistons haven't sniffed the playoffs. Cade's been injured. But it's how it works. Like, you can't offer him less. You can't lose Cade Cunningham because you'll just be back in the draft trying to find Cade Cunningham. Yeah, maybe he's not LeBron James. Well, he's not LeBron James. He's not Luka. I think we know that. But I still think he can be a top 10 to 15 player in this league. I really do. I don't think he's a top 5 kind of guy, but that's okay. There's literally 5 of those guys in the league. Like, I still think he can get around that top 10, top 15 mark, because last season we saw he averaged 23 points, 8 assists, 45% shooting from the field, 36% from 3, all career highs. Like, the way he was playing through that December period, as well as kind of pretty much from like December onwards, like, and he had some solid games in November and October, but like he had a stretch in December where he had like 10 games averaging like 30 points, 9 assists, like, and then to close the season, he had 3 30-point games in a row, like, before he rested. Like, I think it's quite evident that Cade Cunningham is a franchise cornerstone, and franchise cornerstones cost that amount of money, and it's only going to keep going up and up. Like, the next contract Cade signs, who knows how much it's going to be worth? It might be worth $80 million a season, like, truly. So I think that is absolutely excellent news. I get if the figure's a bit jarring, but I think it's a product of, as I said, what you have to pay to keep franchise cornerstones and just kind of the cap going up and continuing to go up. So, like I said, until we see pen on paper, it isn't, or we get an official announcement from the Pistons, there's still that tiny chance he doesn't sign. But to hear someone like James say 99.9%, considering the connections he has and the relationships he has, I think it's pretty much close to a done deal. And I would clearly be shocked if that extension isn't offered and signed by Cade Cunningham. So that's all from me today. Unless we get any other breaking news, as always, we'll be back with a special episode. But until then, we'll be back Thursday. And as always, go.
Lane, skies a jam. Dynamite dunk in the crowd.